Hello. Hi, thank you for coming. As I have the list of your names on the first four assignments, and your names are very familiar. So now this is for test one. Now, what I try to do is I try to use my discretion and helping you as much as I can without, overdoing it being a college class. But let's take a look into this. And I think you'll agree that most answers to my tests come right out of the argumentative assignments. All right. So, all right, number one. And by the way, I'm sorry to just jump right into this. If you have any questions or comments, ladies, please unmute yourself and let me know, okay? Which of the, yes,
I was gonna say thank you.
no problem. All right, so yeah, absolutely. And I mean that at any time at all, even cutting me right mid-sentence. I'm fine with that. All right. So which of the following is an alleged reason for which knowledge of Native American culture and history is incomplete? Lack of sufficient written Native American sources. That is true. That one more was a point of lecture. I don't know how much that is on number one on your sample one, but that is true. You had the codices in Latin America, these bound books written by the Aztec and the Maya, and they were in hieroglyphic writing. And the Spaniards came and had them translated into Spanish. And so it's amazing that we have access to them, and they cover an assortment of topics, their history, main political events that happened, their culture, the way they brought up children, the way they punished people for deviating from the norms, their institutions like school. It's amazing. We don't have that here in the U.S. We don't have much of an answer to the codices from Latin America. B, C. Vance Haynes' theory on Native American immigration from Asia does not dovetail with all radiometric carbon dated objects. That's found right in number one. Remember, some were dated to be 30,000 years old, whereas his theory was that they didn't come until 13,000 years ago. C, alleged cultural, linguistic, and biological ties between Native Americans and indigenous Siberians. The biological ties are tied, and I hope my students can derive just from that this one's true. Culture and linguistics, I'm not sure how much I incorporated into there, and that's another kind of shortcoming of my online classes, is I need to really look over these tests and have it more inclusive in the write-ups, because whatever happens that falls through the cracks, right? I know biological ties were mentioned. I could fill in those cracks by way of lecture, right, through a Zoom meeting or through in-person lecture. And so, at any rate, the linguistic part is true, but the words that they share in common with Siberians were oftentimes associated with hunting and going on the bout, looking for food and living. And so people have made the argument that, well, they borrowed those. They could have just simply borrowed those terms, being in contact with them. European chronicles are alleged by many to be ethnocentric and skewed. Absolutely, right? So these men who wrote the chronicles, the Spaniards and the Englishmen, the Dutchmen, they were not schooled in anthropology. Okay, and so their chronicles of what they perceived to be the history of the Native Americans, their culture, their practices, etc., were always kind of ethnocentrically biased. So it'd be all the above. All right. And let's see here. You're looking for the one that is false. Okay. So don't get tripped up by these, because I have at least a few of them. So A, you're looking at the 5 criteria of civilized status, which is true. The farming revolution was relatively early in some places. That's found right in number 2 of your first handout. Signs of civilization within future U.S. appear first in the American Southwest. Yes, and that comes right out of number 2. And then the Plains tribes met criteria for civilized status first chronologically? No, at least not right now. It's according to studies in multiple fields. So the last one's the one that you would pick, ironically, because it's wrong. It alone is wrong. 3 comes right out of number 3 of the handout. what the Native Americans shared and caused them to be looked down upon. And I bet you could do that from memory, but of course you have access to number 3 on your first historiographical assignment. 2 stereotypical images of Native Americans, that it comes right out of number 2. Okay, and you should be able to find that. Let's see here. Even by today's standards, Spanish colonization of the Americas was democratic, pluralistic, and tolerant? No, not by today's standards. Right, that one's false. Remember, I make the argument in defending the Spaniards on number, oh gosh, I want to say it's like number 4 in the Black Legend handout, where it states, right, that the Spanish didn't know any better, that that was the world they lived in, and they shouldn't be judged by today's standards. But it does not say that by today's standards, they met those requirements well. All right. Number 6 is found in the section on Columbus, as well as the first section on the English Southern colonies, about the transition toward a limitedly and brutally capitalistic economy. All right. And yes, by the way, you'll find that to be true. Contributions from the Spanish, You have this on the 2 ironies of Spanish rule, found in your Black Legend handout, but perhaps not all of them. So again, this is a gap that I should have or would have or hopefully did fill in by way of a Zoom lecture, and which of course I would have in class. A monotheistic belief in the Christian God, of course. Elements of law we borrowed from Rome and Germanic sources, yes. Modern notions of private property and property ownership and urban development, absolutely. They had to teach the Native American tribes how to cultivate the land? No. Look at number 2 of the Native American handout. Clearly the natives, had the farming revolution down very early. Elements of Hispanic culture, yes. So notice that 1 doesn't fit, and that's ironically the one you pick. Giving credit to the Spanish. All right. This is found in the domination of the gentry class in equitable England, English colonies, in the Southern colonies handout. All right. I state A, that slaves were more apt to have the opportunity to buy their freedom under the Spanish. I said B, that there was a system of accountability that the Spanish had. Okay, so yeah, you're looking at both of those. Then number 9, I'm gonna leave alone if that's okay, because it's found in the Black Legend handout, number 1, Las Casas in his book. All right, I believe it's number 1. I don't know how much I say on Castillo though, so this might be another gap. Castillo's, his true history, somewhat justified Spanish conquest of the Aztec, depicting the latter as anything but meek sheep, and that is true. All right. Then 11 would be found with the Spanish not knowing any better with their religion. I want to say it was like number 4 in the Black Legend handout. In that one, you'll find this, that even Sahagún, who was a protector of the Aztec, he was insistent that they be, that they change culturally, that they convert to Christianity. All right, even their Spanish allies. Libro Serra, you find on the missions were a mixed bag section. And remember what I did on that one is I just said that there is some truth to all the above. You had the hagiographies. They wanted to make a saint out of Serra, which has happened recently, showing his self-sacrifice, his benevolence, his protection of them against the Spanish soldiers, etc. But then you have conflict history that states that he was an ethnocentric tyrant, causing the Native Americans to commit cultural genocide. Okay, so that is a strange juxtaposition. Right. 13 is found in number 1 of the Black Legend handout. And I'll just state that Don Juan de Oñate in the history of New Mexico was very, very, it lends very well to conflict history. The Spanish were always trying to dominate, maintain every form of domination, including psychological domination with their religion. And the natives, from time to time, would fight back. All right. So that would support the Black Legend. Now, because the Black Legend, the Spanish said, is an unfair portrait of them as the anti-model, as a colonizer. All right. And then regions in which the Spaniards claimed land, that would be everywhere except for the present Northeast. And that is another gap I don't believe you're going to find in a handout. Right. Look at C for 15. The Spanish colony of New Mexico was depicted as anomalously or out of the ordinary, tolerant and democratic. No way. That was not depicted as such. Then you fast forward to like number 7 in the Southern Colonies handout. Did the French exercise power disproportionate to their small numbers? Did they bully the Native Americans around? Or was it depicted in number 7 the other way around? And just taking a brief look at 7, you'll find that quickly. Number 17, historians with a pro-capitalism bias would depict rigid royal Spanish economic policies as stifling economic development. Absolutely, they would. Their monopolies granted and different rigid control over the economy. Absolutely. Number 1 is almost a trick question. Number 1 is tied to capitalism for better and for worse at the beginning of the Southern Colonies handout. And the argument is made that more opportunities became available for more poor Englishmen and women during the early modern era here in North America. Absolutely. But does it go so far as to say it was an equal playing field, that the rich did not still enjoy great advantage over them? Of course not. It doesn't go that far. Number 19 is tied to David Price's depiction of the Englishman, and in particular, a lot of great man history of John Smith in his book. And you'll get that right out of there. Okay. The section before it is Helen Roundtree. She does it from the perspective of the Native Americans. The whole Jamestown episode with the Powhatan tribe, Powhatan Confederacy. Then agency, practiced by different tribes. Okay. The Powhatan are mentioned in Helen Roundtree's section, and the power that they had and enjoyed. The Huron and Natchez did make demands upon the French in number 7. African-American slaves taking advantage of an acute need for their labor in South Carolina. Absolutely. That's a section in and of itself. I can't remember which number it is. All right. But nothing is said of women. All right. Notice I said nothing is said of women. I'm not saying that what is written is false, but it's simply not in the handout. So that's the one you would choose. Because to be honest, what I wrote is pretty true. Women acquiring their political and economic rights early in the Chesapeake, even if socially they were still stifled in expectations for them to remain ladylike. And a lot of it was numbers, dependence upon the women in numbers. An overwhelming majority of people that were dying in the periods of high death rates were men. And kind of morbidly, that I don't mean to be morbid about it, but that helped women. The Spanish experience with Indian and African labor may have helped convince the English colonies to go with the latter. Yes, you'll find that in the economic and pragmatic reasons for opting for slaves, for African slaves, in the Southern Colonies handout. Then the same section, as a pragmatic decision, diminishing numbers and reliability of white indentured servants, biological success of African Americans, and diplomacy with Native Americans should all be in there. And then Bacon's Rebellion. That's found in the section that depicts colonial Virginia as a very backward oligarchy. Okay. Take a look at B. An inequitable society, especially plagued by false promises to would-be successfully independent farmers, high on expectations and low on education, could form a combustible atmosphere just waiting for rebellion to explode or tyrannical demagogues to take over. And then the legacy of racism, which of the following is true? And of course, all of them might be. So take a look at the legacy of racism that follows directly the section on pragmatic decision for slaves. The legacy of racism. And that's right in there. Then number 8. The next couple are found with number 8. 7 and 8, I'm sorry. French Louisiana's official and unofficial defiance of old world mercantilist restrictions upon opportunities for non-nobles was depicted in the Southern Colonies handout as having emanated from the genuine egalitarian idealism of her leaders. Number 8 states that French Louisiana became fluid almost by accident, not by design. Number 27 appeals again, comes right from number 7. Did the French flex their muscles and abuse their strength? A quick look at number 7 and you'll know if that's true or false. Okay. Then Albion's seed might be another gap needed to fill with lecture. So this book states that the demographic that was able to establish first effective settlement over a colony fashioned its own future folkways of the colony in its own likeness, whatever that demographic was. So remember, the gentrymen made a gentry imprint upon Virginia in the South. And you'll see, or we've already gone over, those who were more bourgeois from the cities of England made the New England colonies and the middle colonies of Pennsylvania and New York more in their own image. So that the South's seigneurial economy, right? Seigneurial economy is one in which a group of aristocrats own most of the land, and most people are dependent upon them for laboring on their land. And so it's largely agricultural. Okay, so it's elitist and chivalric culture and other folkways were primarily the result of the gentry class's first effective settlement. That is very true as well. That most English immigrants to the Southern colonies were liberty-loving, egalitarian, everyone on equal footing. Democrats, no way. No way for the last option of 28. Then, this one is found in the last number of the Northern Colonies handout, the very last section you've done before the test. Dutch New Netherlands. Just take a look at that one. Did I imply that their religious tolerance, their ethnic tolerance, emanated from genuine egalitarianism and from idealism of having a great society, or did it emanate from something more superficial like economics? Number 30, William Penn renounces autocratic rule over Pennsylvania, granting political rights and powers and economic opportunities to commoners, including some marginalized and persecuted non-English folk back in Europe. You find that in the beginning of the section on the beginning of the section on William Penn. Okay. Same thing with 31, courtesy and respect toward Native Americans. But did he seem to do so without worrying about dispossessing them? That's found at the bottom of the section on William Penn in Pennsylvania, straight out of the handout. Okay. And then same thing with 32. 32 is court history of New England. Is it contended that they were relatively democratic and progressive? And you'll find that, you should be able to find that quickly. However, does it also contend below that they could be overbearing or tyrannical in demands for conformity and downright imperialistic bullies in their foreign policy? And I think you'll find that as well. "34 is redundant, the very last section on the Dutch. And the argument I make about the motives, the ulterior motives of granting tolerance to certain groups. Number 35, I think it's very quickly mentioned. The Dutch sometimes granted slaves half freedom. That is true. They sent them up by Albany as kind of a buffer with some of the hostile tribes, and they called upon them when public works were needed. You're looking for which one is false on 36. The Sacred Expedition, right? Established in 1769, was the pattern of the friars and the priests and their missions to be protected by soldiers in the presidios, to establish a pueblo or a city or a town right there with them, and also to be surrounded by haciendas. And it was supposed to be from the mind of King Philip II, and then later Carlos V, to be a more peaceful alternative to conquest. But think about the history books, the interpretations, the section on missions being a mixed bag. Have they consistently and universally been praised as purveyors of civilization? No way. All right. 37, in the St. Lawrence River and Ohio Valley, tribes like the Iroquois took advantage of European demand for furs and militarily ensconced themselves into an economically vital partner position. Absolutely. And I think that's briefly mentioned with the power of the Native Americans over the French. Number 7 of the Southern Colonies handout. Number 38 is just did you know question. I don't think you'll find it in the handouts. St. Augustine, established in Florida by the Spanish in 1565, is the oldest surviving Euro-American city, and that is true. "39, the Puritans' notion of the covenant. Was it a foundation for tolerance of individual lifestyles?" So you find that when you find the revisionist history on the Puritans in the Northern Colonies handout. And it states what they did regarding that covenant. And you could even guess the answer is the covenant, right? Was a covenant like in the Old Testament of the Bible, that their society would follow the rules of God, and he in turn would bless them as a society. But if individuals began sinning against God, God may eventually turn his back on the community. So they were very, very concerned about this and had people like the selectmen snoop on people, make sure they were not sitting in their homes, etc. Then lastly, regardless of motives, the Dutch took in people of many ethnicities and religions to give them credit, because I'm kind of hard on the Dutch in that last section. The last one is true. Regardless of their motives, which may not have been clean and clear, they they, they did take in quite a diverse, population. All right. So I may not give that many, on test 2 and 3. What I'll try to do is I'll try to spend time, more time before this meeting, to kind of triage and go to the most urgent ones that are the ones that I call like that fall in the gap, that I know not to be in the handouts and that I was supposed to just cover with lecture. All right. So any questions? You ladies feel better about this now?
Way better.
Okay, good. Good, good.
Yes,
Um,
thank you.
you're welcome. No, you've earned it. You're here week in and week out. You've earned it. Especially the first test, because you don't know how I write the questions, how they're framed, what I'm looking for, etc. So that makes me happy that I could be of some help. All right. But yeah, any questions at all? Any comments? Because yeah, I'm kind of finished already.
So for future reference, will we have like something similar? Obviously, you said shorter, but where we could go back to the documents that you have us do?
Oh yeah, I mean, feel free to go back to the documents on any test. Now, these tests are not accumulative, so you won't be finding answers from the handouts that you've done for test 2. We just keep moving on subject to subject. But right now, as for taking test 1, by all means, I'm assuming them being online gives you access to print them out if you need to print them out, or just open them up at the same time as opening up your test and being able to click back to them and refer to them. By all means, I couldn't stop you if I wanted in an online situation from using open notes, but I wouldn't if I could. I especially test 1. I want you guys to have access to that.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
I think my biggest problem when I first looked at the test was trying to memorize all the documents that you had wrote. And I
Yes,
was like, I don't know what I need to focus on or what I don't need to focus on and what I
I
need to put in
know.
my notes and flashcards.
I'm sorry. One thing that you could do that could at least give you a beginning is on your own paper, whether it's, typed up and saved or just written on a piece of paper, uh, put, like, Northern colonies, number 1. Um, the the Puritans were progressive and democratic and ahead of their time. Number 2, the Puritans had a darker side of being very ethnocentric with the Native Americans and being very tyrannical with their own. And so, you know what I mean? You could like give yourself a note of the thesis of each section, and that should help quite a bit. Just something to refer to and remind yourself um, of. And then, of course, some of them you need to look for more detail, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
All right. So, yeah. So, but good luck. Um, I tell you what I don't know if I have it down already, but lately I've been given 2 shots at the test for test 1. So let me when we get off, let me check and see what I have it defaulted on and make sure that it is. Because I'd like to give you 2 shots at this.
I definitely need to go back and redo it.
Okay, no problem. All right. So yeah, please do so. Get as high of a grade as you can. That makes me happy. So yeah, I'll
Um,
do that.
I have another question.
Yes.
So in between, because I think the test is like, I think it said unlimited the last time I checked for the attempts. For some of my other classes that I have online,
Mhm.
we can have multiple attempts, but we have like, for example, if I do one attempt and I don't like my score, I could go back, but like in 3 hours. Is this test like the same thing where I have to wait a certain amount of time to try it again?
Oh, Vivian, I wish I could answer that. I don't know. I
Okay.
only know my side of putting the test in and setting it up. I don't spend enough time going into because they have that option for us to go into student view. But even with student view, I don't think I could like, hypothetically take a test as a student,
Okay.
being, logged in as the teacher. But I'll tell you what, because this is the first test, um, when I go to the default state of things right now, if you're right, Vivian, and it's on unlimited currently, I'll just keep it there.
Okay. Thank you.
But I to be honest, I probably won't 2 and 3. Like with test 2, I'll probably still be fine with giving you 2 shots. But yeah, I don't know about unlimited for all 3.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Can we expect written feedback for the first written assignments that we've done?
Yes, I am so sorry that you've not received that yet.
No, that's
I
okay.
no, honestly, that's a sincere apology. I intended to do it this weekend. I spent Friday simply setting up your Excel sheet and all the assignments and putting it on a system whereby each the points that you accumulate add up and it gives me percentages and all of that. And I'll be darned if that didn't for 4 classes take me 2.5 hours. And then family things happened and then I just never got back to it. I apologize. But everything's set up now. I have no excuses. Everything on my side is set up. Now all I have to do is get in there and grade them. Right? So yeah, thank you for your patience. But yeah, that's it, you guys, from me, ladies.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. All right. So thank you for coming faithfully.
We'll see you next Tuesday.
Sounds great. Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.
You too.